Okay, hello everyone. I'm Richard Herskowitz. I'm the artistic and executive director of the Ashland Independent Film Festival, and you have just seen our program Short Docs 1, American Portraits, and we have a number of the filmmakers here to talk about their films. And so we have, why don't I just kind of go around, let me just say something that the programmer of this collection, Ora Johnson, had the concept of American Portraits as she was just seeing the amazing diversity of characters that were represented across the short films that she was previewing. And she said this phrase began to come to her of "my country 'tis of thee." And what does that mean? And she said that this country is made up of this incredible diversity of people who make up the country, who create the country. And she became interested, she says, in showcasing a sample of this wild diversity of people that make up our country, as well as trying to share a variety of directorial styles. So so if we could just start maybe by introducing ourselves, tell us a little bit about how you found your character, your subject, and what made you know you wanted to create a film about this person. So I'll just start with Ellie. Could you start and just say who you are in the film you made?
Sure. I'm Elly Pierce, and I made the film Les DEUX, and I made it together with Mara Bresnahan and Tim O'Donnell, and they are not able to be here today. But we found this film because Mara was a nurse at the Perkins School for the Blind, and she served there for 10 years, and she met these incredible students, and on this beautiful but very desolate campus where they live, and became really interested particularly in those students who had gifts of music. And the brothers that we are following in this very short film, we actually originally were making a feature-length doc about coming together of a number of different schools for the blind, and we filmed with Jonah and Jamie before and after that event, and we decided that that was a story on its own, and to pursue that and table the feature-length doc for a little bit of time.
Okay. Let's go on to Cullen.
Yes, hi, my name is Cullen. I am the director of CHARON. I met the subject Myron Dial as an artist. I met him, I first found out about his work in the fall of 2011. It's almost 9 years ago now. I was taking a class, I was taking a music theory class, and my professor who has worked with the artist. She's made some music to go with some of his pieces. She mentions his life story in one of my classes, how he has epilepsy, and the epilepsy causes these strange visions that are the basis of his art. And she played some of the songs she created for his art in our class. And at the same time, I was taking some film courses along with Ryan, who I co-produced the film with and is my roommate now. And it came to me that this subject seemed like a really interesting person to make a film about. So we actually, in the fall of 2011, we made this sort of 5-minute student version of this film. But after that, the story just kept kind of wouldn't leave us alone. It just kept speaking to us, and we always felt like it deserved a much more elaborate telling. So, after graduating and kind of getting a foothold in the industry, we decided to revisit it, and we shot the film over a couple of years, and we wrapped it last fall.
I'm going to want to ask you a little bit more about this, but let's move on just to Amy and tell us about you, who you are in the film you made.
I'm Amy Jenkins, and I directed Wishes. Wishes is a durational video that spans over a decade. And it began really as a kind of the ritual of myself as parent filming my child's birthday wishes each year. And as this ritual evolved, so did my child, and it became clear as the years progressed that my child was beginning to have gender questions, and so those, in a kind of subtle way, follow through the film. And Adam is now actually 17, and we have decided to, in fact, make a feature together collaboratively about gender and his generation.
And Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa McClung. I'm here in Western Massachusetts. And let's see, so I was writing a narrative, a fiction film, and I was struggling with the character, making characters, writing interesting characters. So one of my mentors said, why don't you go out into the world, you have a camera, and find some interesting characters in the wild. And so I thought that was a good idea. And so 5 minutes from my house in Northampton, Massachusetts, I went out, and the first store I stumbled into, I found Louis, and I loved his store. I had already kind of had my eye on it because I was attracted to it because it's one of these pretty uncurated antique shops where things are just kind of piled up. And so I walked in and I saw Louis, and he was just ready to be on camera. I think he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. And just immediately we became really fast friends, and it just went from there. And it was a really joyful process because I just went in with no expectations. It really started as an exercise. And then his willingness to share his life and his visions and his mysticism with me blossomed into this 8-minute short. So that's the story. And I actually did end up writing him into a fiction short that I'm finishing up right now. I'm editing it now, and I wrote his character. It's just, of course, it's just a play on himself. But it was really fun directing him about a year ago in being himself in a fictional way. So it's taken a few different ways. Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, so just if you could elaborate a little bit how you chose the directorial style of the film, particularly the representation of the objects.
That's a great question. So like I said, so it really started with Louis completely, like an exercise. I really just wanted to get his voice, and I did a lot of writing. I think through the editing process with this short doc, I watched so much footage of him. I had hours and hours of footage that then writing the fiction short, I was really able to capture his voice in a way that really surprised me. It was like one of those moments where you're writing and you're channeling someone's energy. So that was really fun. But the objects really came to play. So I had a lot of footage of his biography and of his role in the town and everything like that. But what really drew me to the store and to him is that it was sort of this portal into another world. So I think things really started coming into focus when I sort of started another project on my computer and said, I'm just going to focus on the objects. And so I gathered all that footage, and it started to take shape. And then I went back, because he's so close to me, he's 5 minutes down the road, I went back and started really just experimenting with the stop motion, which I had never done before, but have always been curious about. And the macro lens, I took out a macro lens from our amazing award-winning public access station, Northampton Open Media. Full disclosure, I'm on the board. but I took out a macro lens, and so that really led me to observe the objects in a new way. Yeah.
It's a good segue to Cullen and your use of animation. It's so incredible. Wait till all of you see this. Just how did you come to that decision to mix animation and live action, and in the way that you did?
Yeah, it started with, for me, really the kind of overall concept of the film is this idea that, this idea of kind of an unreliable sense of reality, of really bringing you into our subject's head, since with Myron and his condition, oftentimes he's not really sure what's real or not. And I wanted to make you, the person watching the film, feel that way. So it started with some kind of early tests I did of having it all be based on his artwork and using that kind of as a bridge to bring you into his world.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with these tests of just kind of using his art and constructing a world out of that. And as we started shooting more, I was really drawn to bringing the art and the animation into the footage itself, into the scenes themselves, and having it essentially by the end of the film, in the last minute, sort of just taking over.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the techniques, yeah, I used every technique that I know, and then some new ones. At the start, he gave us a set of CDs of some high-res scans of his art. And that helped a lot. And then we did a separate day of just a stills shoot, where I got a stills camera and I was able to go in and really close on just the grain of the canvas, and some of the stop motion elements you see, like the suitcase. Yeah, it was the idea. I liked also playing with the idea that each scene, almost as kind of, while it's all based in his art as a sort of unifying element, each scene is almost its own idea, kind of, or its own language a little bit. It felt more surreal and dreamlike that way. How you have a dream, and a dream can go through all these different phases, but they all sort of flow together and make sense in its own way. So it was a little bit of that also.
So I'd like to ask you just about the position of being a parent and filmmaker, getting the detached perspective that might be necessary as a documentarian to make a film that is rooted in home movies. Can you just speak about that?
I've been working in that kind of genre for a long time. There's a earlier film I made called Instructions on Parting, which is also a family work. And actually, my firstborn, who was originally named Audrey, is in that film from age 0 to 4. And I think what it really started out for me was more kind of using my camera almost as a journal and documenting my life, and not really thinking or being that concerned about other people seeing the footage. But as time evolved and things changed around me, and my family also began to grow and change, and I realized that these were very common experiences that many people have, and that I had a kind of unique position as a mother for Wishes, and as a daughter and sister for my earlier piece, that gave me a sort of entree into their world, and I didn't necessarily need to detach myself. It was really more about the intimacy and the ease at which my family has allowed me to portray them. With Wishes, there's a certain kind of discovery that I think every parent goes through when they step back and even look through like a photo album and see the kind of shocking evolution over time of their child, in the way that they physically change, and also as they emerge into their selfhood. And so for Wishes, I really wanted to contain it essentially to just birthdays and our yard and, our dining room, really simplify and pare down to a certain kind of ritualistic pattern, in order to kind of highlight that development of selfhood that I was observing in my child, and that we all observe in our children as they grow.
It's thoroughly illuminating, I would say, just as a viewer, because you have this entree that to allow us to watch this natural evolution of a transgender identity. I mean, again, you see it happening, slowly evolving, and again, it's a privilege to be able to share that and to understand that. I think it's a wonderful contribution.
Thank you. Yeah, and just also to kind of integrate the absolute normalcy of it, and that for people who maybe haven't experienced or don't know a lot about transgender children and transgender people, I think one of the other things I wanted to show with this film was just the very natural evolution of Adam's personhood.
You did. And finally, again, a question for Ellie, just about the style of your film, which seems somewhere between documentary and also performance and stage performance. It feels like you arrive at something that really is fresh. Could you say something about how you developed your outlook and your style for this film?
Yeah, I mean, we actually set out to make a film that was really different than most of the films we've seen about disabilities. Both Mara and I worked in programming for a disabilities film festival, and we found that so many of the films had these really simplistic, reductionist, it's a film about the disability, it's not a film about the person, but more so that it sacrificed aesthetics and experimentation for this really, really, again, oversimplified, people with disabilities are heroes, or they're victims, or they're just like us. And, no, this film, we really wanted it to be able to stand on its own aesthetically, and that it's about two brothers that have a really cool relationship and that have beautiful singing voices. And it's really ultimately, it's not a film about blind people. It's a film that happens to have subjects that are blind. And so we tried to really focus on the sensory dimension of, they live in a very sensory informed world where sound matters a little bit more, and touch. And so we tried to really focus on all of the senses when we were shooting and editing the film, and really trying to not, like, we cut it it's nonlinear, in part because, again, we were really tired of that same arc in many disability stories where, it's a hero's journey. This is just a day in the life,
Well, thank you all. Your films are wonderful. There are also 3 other films that people saw where the filmmakers weren't able to make it for this Q&A. I look forward to all of you being able to see each other's films, and people watching this, I hope you've rated the film or will rate the film at the end, each film at the end of this screening. Thank you all for participating in the Ashland Independent Virtual Film Festival.
Thank you.
Richard.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to watch all of your films now.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.